Welcome back, Exes and podcast fans. Hey guys, you guys, I am so excited. We have one of the most exciting episodes, and I say this every single time because I'm so excited to speak to literally every single person. I think that this episode is so exciting for me because of the perspective is different from what we've heard from anybody that we've had here. So I'm going to go ahead with my little disclaimer because we all know that there's a possibility that people could get litigious, and I'm not about that life. So I am speaking on personal experiences and personal opinions that are based on these personal experiences. My guest that I have is also speaking on personal opinions based on personal experiences. If we happen to throw out names like Amway, for example, it's not to defame anybody. We're just here to share stories and experiences and share some knowledge and wisdom. And this person, I tell you right now, has a lot of wisdom to share. So, not to defame anybody, okay? No lawsuits here. Yes? Okay, cool. You guys, I'm really excited. We have Steve. Steve was actually on Life After MLM with Roberta. This is somebody who has so much information on Amway and the history of the tools business and just so much information. So I'm really excited to welcome Steve. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I was so excited when I saw that you reached out to me because I recognized your name, and the moment you said I was on Life After MLM, I was like, I know this is the Steve, because I was telling you this before we started recording, that it was your episode and the one with Sean Munger that really opened my eyes to the fact that the tools business is what's actually bringing in the most money as opposed to the product side of things.
And it's different percentage wise the higher level you get in the Amway business. In the LOA that you're part of. I guess that's a better word. In the LOA that you're part of.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I really, when I was involved, had no idea. And I've been like just deconstructing for so many years. And how long were you a part of Amway?
So I actually signed up in Amway, believe it or not, in 1981, I believe it was. College kid, looked like a good idea. Answered an ad on a bulletin board. Like, anybody looking to make more money? And the way they used to tell you not to do it, but I didn't do it. I was going to college, or didn't do anything, and then jump ahead several years, got married, and my wife got pregnant, and then my daughter was born in May of 1990, and we went platinum in June of 1990. Our 5th month of qualification was the month that we had the baby, and then we built the business. There was a level called Pearl. Went Pearl, and then we went Sapphire, and then we got an Emerald qualification a couple times, and actually built the business not in an organized. We were in an organized LOA, but it wasn't like there was a name like some of the names that you hear worldwide or some of the other ones. And then there were several things that happened along the way that created a lot of doubt, and I ended up changing lines of affiliation. I moved over to a different line of affiliation, which I'll explain if you want me to, how that works. And then I built the business. I wasn't even building. I was holding on to a business. I was trying to maintain it. We had about 275 people coming out to conferences in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And by 2007, when I left my LOA, I had about 35 people coming to conferences. We lost a ton of people. And I can go over why as we go into it. And then I stayed in that new LOA for a couple of years, and then pretty much just stopped doing anything. And I was like 27, I think, when I went platinum. I don't know, somewhat young. We were the young up and comers. When I stopped building the business, I just didn't want to start it over again. We walked away. So I'm going to say I built the business for about 15, 16, 17 years. Wow. And we had about 1,000 people in our group. And like I said, we got an Emerald qualification. We had 4 legs over, and I had about 25 downline silvers, golds, platinums. I had some rubies downline. We had a leg that was doing almost $1 million a year. Yeah, it was a good business for us.
Wow. And at the time, I mean, from the way that you described it, like you were just having a great time just building this Amway business. And when you really started building, what was the catalyst for, we need to get this done? And then what made it really exciting for you once you actually started to grow?
Well, okay. So my motivation was real. So it wasn't based on levels of growth. We had both decided that we wanted my wife to be home full time. So that was really the motivation. I used to joke when we used to speak at functions that, I couldn't get motivated by a 6,000 pound car or a 300,000 pound house, but a 6 pound, 7 ounce baby girl motivated me. And so that was the key to, hey, let's get this thing done. But I got to tell you, it was different. And one of the reasons I think we had the success that we had early was I was living in a rural area. And this is before Amazon and everything else. So it was a self-consumption business model, even though that we told everybody, no, you have to service 10 customers a month. There wasn't a PV qualification. It was a number of customers. But when we would open up our starter kit with somebody, there was these pieces of paper in there that would say, you must service 10 customers a month. And we'd rip them up and we'd say, don't worry about that. Just order your own products. And in rural Iowa, where we were, it was very easy to sponsor people because the concept of, having a box of laundry detergent or a box of this or that being shipped right to your house. I mean, now that's cool. We all wait for our Amazon packages to get there, and it's the coolest thing. And if they're not shipped fast enough, I can't believe it's taking 2 days to get it, So the concept of doing something from home and having stuff shipped right to your house was easier to differentiate and sell that concept to people. So sponsoring, I think, was actually easier back then. So we could bring a lot of people in the business if you're willing to go out and do the work and show people how they can, pick up products and do this kind of thing, or pick up, have stuff shipped right to them, whether it be vitamins, whatever. That worked out good, and you can get a lot of customers doing that too, because it was more of a self-consumption model than a sales model. Today, you're competing with, stores and different things. So, like if I buy a can of Celsius energy drink, now I pay maybe $1 versus a can of XS, which at that point, I don't know what they are now, but it was like, $2 a can or something. And I got to pay shipping to get it. So by the time I pay the shipping, I'm paying more money. But that was a new concept to people. So man, that just comes right to my house. I don't run the store and buy it. So that made it easy to bring people in. So I would say the thing that motivated me was I knew I could do this. Like, this makes sense. I can do this. If I just get my head out of my butt, I can do this. Don't get out of my own way. And I ended up sponsoring, when we went platinum. I think when we went silver, which would have been March of 90 is what I'm guessing. I think somewhere in there, we had 14 people personally sponsored. I had 14 legs and 55 people in my downline. So we had 69 people in our group, and we did right around 7,700 points. So our average points per person was about 120, 108, somewhere 112, something like that. Whereas today they're having everybody do their 300, everybody do their 200, everybody do that. They're putting qualifications on. We were expecting people to do 100 points, and you put 75 people in a group. It was easy to put a group together. It took me about 6 months to put a platinum ship together. Matter of fact, it was, I think in March, we hit 7,500. And in February, I think we were only at 2,500. We jumped like 5,000 points in one month because we'd been doing the work. We'd been putting the people in. And I was just innocently, I'm like, hey, this is great. Let's build a business. And when people get in, I show them what we were doing. They'd start doing it. I'd be, duplicated. I was building the Amway business. I didn't know of any other thing. I was listening to, at that time was cassette tapes. Okay. I'm listening to my tapes. I'm reading my book, Magic of Thinking Big, How to Influence People, Power of Positive Thinking, Magic of Believing. And I'd read 15 minutes every night. I'd go to bed, and the next day, get up, go to work, get off work. And I'm out, man, I'm getting in the car and driving. And some of my groups were 2 and 3 hours away. And I was having a blast. I was like, I became friends with a lot of these people. We're going to go, walk the beaches of the world together. We're going to have fun. And it worked out. It just worked out for us. So my motivation was more of just, I wanted to be part of the big picture. I want to be part of the team. I wanted my wife to be home full time. Someday I'm going to retire, but that was out in the distance.
Yeah.
I didn't have like, a big dream board with all this stuff. I was just more just, let's just go build this. This makes sense. All I got to do is talk to somebody. And I think I sponsored 50. I sponsored 50. I say because my wife wasn't that active. She would do the products and do the product pickup, and she'd get the tapes out to everybody, because you had tape pickup too that back then. So not only product pickup, they picked up their tools, and so I think I sponsored 53. We ended up with 2 qualified legs, 12 out of 12. I had 2 other legs that went over, and they were in and out. So I never actually got the Emerald ship done. Had I known that I could manipulate volume like some people do today, I probably would have manipulated the volume and gotten Emerald done, but I didn't know that you could do that. So
yeah, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it was fun. So we built the business, and then my motivation became, I wanted to be, the biggest guy, the biggest guy around. Like, it's very narcissistic kind of. But then we got invited to start speaking. And that I enjoyed. I loved speaking. Like I'm enjoying doing this right now, as you probably tell. I'd love to get in front of a group and telling stories and making jokes. And you always told your personal experience, so nobody can argue. Dexter Yeager used to always say, a person with a theory is never at the mercy of a person with a theory is never at the mercy of a person with an experience. So
Yes.
this was my experience. So I couldn't really relate to people who couldn't build the business. So, I used to go to airports to meet people. I was out prospecting, just like, I know you mentioned that there were times that you're at 7-Eleven at 2 o'clock in the morning, you were trying to prospect people. Now they put them in a whole process and all this stuff. But I was just out throwing mud on the wall, seeing what stuck. And if I wasn't out
Right.
at night doing something, I was afraid somebody's going to drive by my house and see that my car was there and be like, "Hey, Steve's home, so we're going to duplicate him." So I'd either park my car
Wow.
behind the house so nobody'd see it, or I would go out and meet people. I actually met my first platinum leg. I met in a shopping mall. I'm almost embarrassed to say this now because it just seems so cheesy. But I was hungry and doing this stuff. And my wife was at home. It was Tuesday night, which was order call-in night. So people would call their orders in and then they'd come pick them up on Friday. We had a call-in, like you call your upline. And the goal of call-in
Yeah.
night was to always be the last one to call because that meant you had the biggest group. I'd be like, okay, I can't stay home. I don't have a meeting tonight. I'm going to go out. I went to the mall and there was a guy sitting on a bench. His name was Doug. And I sat down next to Doug and I said, "Did you lose your wife too?" And he says, "Yeah, she's in one of these stores shopping around or something." I said, "Yeah, mine is too." Now mine was at home doing like our 300 PV order, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm talking about for the whole group. And we get talking, one thing leads to another. I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "What do you do?" And he's I'm a mortician. And he says, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm my own company." And I started talking about all this stuff. And hey, we should get together. We exchange names and phone numbers, set up an appointment, go show them the plan. They get sponsored. We rip up the 10 customer rule sheet with them, just like we did with everybody else. And we ended up,
Yeah.
that leg ended up being a big leg of ours. Actually, I think the deepest I got in that leg was like 44 deep. So
Wow.
yeah, that became a big leg of ours, but literally met him in a shopping mall on a bench, lying to him that my wife was there shopping too. And we ended up
Wow.
becoming, you end up becoming friends. I mean, we were all young. They were young. They were my age, whatever, or maybe a little bit younger.
Yeah.
My second leg came out of, I sponsored somebody from work who led me to somebody down 4 levels and deep was where I found my founder's platinum in that leg. And then my third leg, which we never actually got quite totally qualified. I had 2 really big legs, and then 3 and 4 were much smaller. That was a person from, where was that one from? Oh, that was somebody I actually met in college who led me to somebody else, and I built depth in that leg.
Wow.
And then my fourth one was a gentleman I knew from a casino. It was just people you meet.
Wow.
And I think we had, like, out of the 53 we sponsored, there was a bunch of them that did nothing. They would have never made it through the process. But we're just putting people in, and I'm having a blast building my business, and I can't wait to go diamond. I thought there'd be a ton of Amway income in there, so I'm going to keep going.
Right, right. And so many things that you said. I kind of want to break down a couple of things that like caught my ear. So when you're talking about the tapes and the reading, for anybody who's newer, we call that core, right? Where you have to change or remain employed. For worldwide specifically, that's what we would call it. And it's crazy because I was talking to the anti-MLM kid. If you guys haven't heard her episode, please go listen. But these concepts have always been around. They just have different names for them. So this idea of putting someone else's voice into your ear right away and reading these ideas and constantly staying indoctrinated have been around since the very beginning. And then also, for anybody, because I was actually speaking to somebody who didn't know this, before 9/11, you could actually go and wait for people at the airport at their terminal. You didn't have to go through security. You could go and wait. So for anybody who's too young and doesn't know that, I remember we would meet my dad right at the terminal when he would come back from wherever he was at. So if anybody's confused about that, that's how that worked. And then you're talking about this excitement and being a part of something big and just being excited because Amway is like the greatest thing in the world. That's where all your money's gonna come from. When did you find out that Amway wasn't the most profitable aspect of this business?
I didn't know that there was money in all this stuff. Like, I was listening to tapes to learn. I was literally listening, like, okay, teach me a technique, teach me what to say. Like, I'll give you an example of a technique, okay? And it's so natural for most people, but they don't realize it's a technique. So I think it was the girl you just mentioned, the daughter of the IBOs. What do you call her? MLM kid? Yeah.
The
I think,
anti-MLM kid.
I think she made reference to, just the script, or maybe you said it on one of your podcasts, but like I would say to somebody, where do you work? Oh, I work over at, Walmart. Oh, I've heard Walmart's a great place to work. And that was a technique, because if you said, oh, do you like it there? They would always defend their position, say, yeah, I really like it there. But if you said, oh, I heard that's a really great place to work, they'd be like, I don't know who you're talking to. It's not so great. Ooh, there's my in. So if I talk
Yep.
about how great their place is to work, they'll come back with this. And it almost became just like you're just churning through using the same sentences. I always just tell people different excuse, different face, same excuse. I could pretty much number the excuses people would give me why they weren't going to do it. Okay, I don't have time. That's number one. I don't have the money. That's number two. And if I look at them and say, okay, same excuse, different face. But to answer your question, when I found out we'd hit the platinum level and we were profitable and we were making enough money where she could quit her job. She did quit, so we replaced her income. I actually was one of those people that we made money and it was enough for her to quit. It's certainly not enough to buy a yacht, but we had hit a nice level in the business, and we got invited to speak in Wisconsin for a platinum couple in their group. And there was maybe 150 people. I think there were 3 or 4 organizations that came together. There might have been 300 people. I don't know what it was, but not a big group, but we're platinums. And we get in this auditorium. I think it's a high school auditorium or something. And they've got a big, like, our name is on the wall. Welcome, Steve, and whatever. And big deal. And they take us out for lunch, and then, what can we get you? And we are like celebrities. There was one couple, I'm going to jump around here. You've heard it called the weave, right? Or you ask me a question, I start to answer, but then I go into something else. I'll always come back to the original question. But to tell you how much fun this speaking was, there was a couple that I'm still very good friends with today who are emeralds, and they would host these functions. And this one's happened to be in Wisconsin, but they would take it to another level. Like, they would drive you around in limousines and Cadillacs, and they put flags on the car. So when you got to the restaurant to eat, people thought you were a dignitary, and they would actually have their guys stand up with earphones in, like the Secret Service, and they would stand inside the restaurant. So we would pull up to go to dinner, and people were like, who is that guy? Who's that guy? I'm just a platinum. I'm nobody. But they made it such a big deal that became their motivation on their team. Like, they wanted to be part of the transportation team. Like, the guy who shows the plan the most, you get to be on the transportation team. You get to wear a headset and make it look like you're in the Secret Service, and they go right through red lights and all this stuff. We had a blast with it. Really great couple. We had a blast with it. But so we were up speaking, and we got done. We did so this is speaking not at a big function like your big functions today. These are more like team meetings. So you'd have from 2:00 to 5:00, you'd have a seminar. We talk about the nuts and bolts of how you build the business. Then we break from dinner from 5 to 7, then come back from 7 to 9, and you would tell your story. So we did our rally, whatever. And when we were leaving, John said to me, turn in your mileage. Let me know how many miles you drove. We'll reimburse you for your mileage. And so I don't remember what it was, a couple hundred miles, whatever. And so I'm expecting to get my mileage reimbursed at whatever the standard rate is. And there was more money added to the check. I think another $250. And I'm like, I think I got overpaid. This is an honest organization. I probably should, let them know that they paid me too much mileage. So I said to my upline, I go, yeah, they gave me like way more than I was supposed to get. I think I got like $400. I was only supposed to get like 150. And he says, oh, no, that's your speaking fee. And I said, my what? He goes, that's your speaking fee. I go, what do you mean speaking fee? He goes, when you go out and speak, you're taking time away from your group, and you're pouring your heart into somebody else's group and taking your time away, so you get paid. And the higher you get in the business, the more you'll get paid in each one of these that you do. So there's a lot of money in speaking. This is the first time I heard. A lot of money in speaking as you get bigger in the business, but I'm not bigger in the business. I'm not making it now. And so that's something that, is you really want to make sure that you never lose the speaking circuit, because that's a good way to pick up some extra income, especially if you're an exciting, IBO, they call it IBO, a distributor. And we were young. So, we were 26, 27 years old. So, there are a lot of much older people that were in the business then. And so we were kind of like up and coming, and like, oh man, this speaking thing is cool. And then I think we went to Arizona and spoke, and we went a couple other places, and we got paid. And I was like, then it became, just part of it. Like, I was getting a couple $100 every time I spoke. And it was because I was taking time away from my business and pouring my heart out to other people. So I could understand why I got paid. And that's when I saw there was a little bit of money in the system, where I saw, as we continued to build the business, I started to see some other things that were disturbing. But by the same token, you're in this mental gymnastics argument with yourself, because I'm making money. So even if it's disturbing, I can't walk away. My wife quit her job. She'd have to go back to work. Like you start to uncover the uncoverable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so we got invited on that. We didn't have these team rallies. We had these big regional conferences. So there'd be several diamonds that would come into one group. So you'd go to Iowa State University, let's say, and there'd be 3,000 people at a conference, and that was the one that you went to. And on the Friday night before, that was always on Saturday, on the Friday night before, the diamond in that area who hosted the function would have pizza and pie at their house. They had a big home, 1,000 square feet. It's like, oh my God, dream building. We're gonna go to their house and see their wallpaper and all
Yes.
their 1,000-pound marlin. I can't wait. I don't even fish. But so we would go to their house, and they would charge us $5 a person, mind you, $5 a person to eat pizza and pie at somebody's house. And then you can
Wow.
walk around the house and you can look at things and you can go in the office and you can dream, man. This is what your life is going to be. It's like this is it. So I'm walking around and I go into the office and there's a receipt on the counter for tapes. And we were paying $7 a tape. And I'll never forget this. The receipt was to them for $1.75 a tape. And I saw the receipt and I thought,
Wow.
why are there's $1.75? Of course, then I started thinking about it. Okay, so they pay $1.75. My upline pays $2.75. This guy pays $3.75. I'm getting charged $7. Oh, okay. So there's money and tools, but I'm entrenched. I'm building. I'm not negative about it. I'm just like, oh, maybe there'll be. I didn't even think maybe there'll be profits someday. I'm just like, okay, obviously they make money. I got to,
Yeah.
whatever. They poured their heart out to us, so I guess they deserve it.
Right.
So that was one thing. And then I had another thing happen. So because again, we weren't digital, we were product pickup and tape pickup and all this stuff. We had a program. They didn't have apps. There were no apps. So the apps today, you get a certain, I don't know how it works, but I think you get like so many audios a month and you get certain things. So we were all, individually. And the way this would work, and this is just, when I tell you this, your mind is going to just spin when I get done with this. You haven't heard this part yet. So we had a program called Book of the Month. And the way Book of the Month worked was our upline would pick out a book that they thought was, good for the organization. And it was important that you only read the books that your upline picked because your upline wanted to know the mentality of what's going on in their downline. So they pick the books. So as an example, one of the books might be, the book they use now in the process. What is it called? The Business of the 21st Century. So let's just pretend that's the book. Okay. And so I would get, maybe I had 100 people on my team that were signed up for the book program. So we would get 100 books would come in a box. And then at product pickup, this group had 12 and this group had 13 and this group had 19 and whatever. We distribute out our books for all their people. And for some reason, when I opened up one of the books, the price on the book was $22, but there was a receipt in my box. Like whatever, whoever sent it to me accidentally left the receipt in there. And they were only paying like $11, $9 a book. And we were getting charged 22.
What?
So I wrestled with this for a while. I'm like, holy crap. I go, I gotta find out what's going on, because if the books are only 9, why are we paying 22? For a business to be profitable, you look at two things. You look at your cost of doing business and you look at your income coming in. And hopefully your income coming in is higher than your cost of doing business. If you want to grow your profits, you either lower your costs or you raise your income coming in. So in my mind, if I can buy the book for $9, if the knowledge in this book is super important,
Yeah.
and I can get it for $9, then I've cut $13 more in my profitability. And so in my mind, I thought, my guy should only be paying 9. Like I wasn't making anything on this. I'm paying 22.
Right.
So I called my upline up and I said, I think there's some kind of mistake here. I said, we just got a receipt for the books. And for some reason, you guys left the receipt in our box. I'm sure they had other people that got boxes with no receipt. And I said, but the receipt says these books are $9. Are they $9 or what? Am I supposed to charge $9 or $22? And he said, oh, no, they're $22. He goes, that's a mistake. I don't know where that is coming from. Rip that receipt up. That's not even, I will call and take care of that. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we all paid the $22. But again, another thing just going in, right? just more input coming in. Now, the way the tools work, and your audience will not even believe this because they've never probably even written a check.
Right.
So the way this worked was, because everybody was at a distance from each other, what I would do is we would take a book of checks, like out of a checkbook, 25 checks in a pile. We would sign 25 checks, not filling out any amount, and we'd mail that to our upline. They had a blank checkbook. So if I owed them $2,000 for books, we would get a call that says, hey, I'm putting in check number 563 for $2,000. And we had a drawer in our house. You talk about liability. And every one of our downline, I had a checkbook from them. So we had a stack of checkbooks that were signed. And we would call them and say, hey, we're going to put in check number 532 for $500 for your books. And they would collect from their people. We had blank signed checks. And if you'd asked for that today, I'd shoot you.
Yes. Holy crap. That's one of the, actually, now that you mention it, this makes so much sense because and again, you guys, everybody who knows, like I'm speaking just from the perspective of somebody who was in Worldwide. The way that they would describe why we went digital is, oh, your upline can't mess with you now because they used to mess with the money with the checks, and that's why they can't mess with you now because it's all done digitally. But that's crazy. A blank check, and you're right. If somebody asked me for a blank check, I would be like, "You're a scammer, go away." But in that time, it makes sense as to why they did that.
But don't forget, the input you're getting at every conference, at every event, is what a hero your upline is and what great people they
Yeah.
are. And if we have a church service after every function, and we're going to show everybody what great, these are the holiest of holy. These are the best of the best, because that's why they got in
Yeah.
Amway, because they're the best of the best. The guy who's not the best of the best doesn't even see the opportunity. So you have this blind trust. You have a blind
Yeah.
trust. And then you're also taught, when if you're going to go buy a car, if you're going to buy a home, if you're going to have a baby, if you're going to check with your upline, because you don't want to do anything that'll slow your business down. So you put these
Yep.
people on a pedestal, and mentally that pedestal, and I think this is just human nature, but that pedestal relates to all aspects of life. So you could have an upline that's got a real shitty marriage, but yet you feel like you can go to them and talk about your marriage because they're your upline.
Yeah.
You can trust them. You can have an upline that's gone bankrupt, like several, and I can point them out to anybody who wants to know on the internet, that have gone bankrupt, have had problems, they got financial issues, but because they're your upline, you can go to them with financial things because they have your best interest at heart. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? So
Absolutely.
there's so much edification going on, and toxic positivity and toxic edification, which I don't know if anybody's used that term. I've heard toxic positivity. I've never heard toxic edification. So if that gets patented, I get credit for that. There's so much of that goes on that you just feel like, oh, these people are, I found like just heroes. I mean, I found,
Yes.
I can't believe. And I would trust my upline with anything. I would call and we talk, and I mean, just whatever the subject was. And now I look back at it and think their marriage sucked. They never actually went diamond. They say they did, but I know how they did. And I'm like, okay, I'm talking about a guy about how to go diamond that's never actually gone diamond, even though he has a diamond pin. And the reason I know he never went diamond, he never got a diamond bonus.
Wow.
Because unless all 6 of your legs are in the same country, you don't qualify for a diamond bonus. And 5 of their legs were in our country, and one of them was foreign.
I'm now questioning like so many diamonds that I know of.
You have to. They all 6 of your legs have to be in market. And in
Wow,
market is
that's
meant by in the
crazy.
country. So the way that you could do it is, you could sponsor yourself through a corporation. So you could incorporate, say say in Mexico, and be sponsored by Danny Rodriguez. You're the upline to the Mexican business, and then that leg goes platinum, and you get credit for it for the pin level. But because it's in another country, you don't bonus off of it.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and
Okay.
what turned out to be the guy that was at the top of that leg, was a good friend of mine, and he was only at 4,000 points. And I remember saying to him one time, "Well, how did the leg get 7,500 if you were at the top and you only got 4,000?" He's like, "I have no idea." So somebody, obviously at that time, Double X was the product to order because it had the best PV to dollar ratio. Neutralite did.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure somebody ordered a bunch of Neutralite and, probably fertilized their lawn with it. Probably have most awesome grass you've ever seen with all that nitrogen.
Wow.
But yeah, they're burying PV. I knew of one couple that, in order to qualify for platinum, would order a bunch of products and then donate them to a homeless shelter for women. Like send like $5,000 worth of vitamins into a homeless shelter. Then they can write it off as a tax write-off, get the bonus on it, and write off the donation as a tax shelter, but they would still qualify at 7,500 to hit the platinum level.
Wow. I mean, hey, that's a fantastic. I mean, donating to any sort of like shelter is obviously a really good thing, but what?
Yeah.
Deception?
Well, see that, but then your group sees you go platinum. I mean, so they see you go platinum, and they get excited, like, oh my God, Joe's moving on. I got to move on too. Like, don't move on without
Yeah.
me. And so you
Yep.
create a vacuum behind you of people that want to follow you. But in some cases, it's all legitimate. I mean, it's not hard. But I mean, if an alien came from another planet and you said, hey, we got to put 25 people together to create 300 points, can anybody on Earth do it? Yeah, you can do it. I mean, it's not that hard, really.
Right.
Conceptually, it's not that hard. Don't misunderstand me. I think it's not an easy thing to do, especially today, because it's not they're trying to portray it as a selling organization, but it's still basically a buying organization.
It
And
is. Yeah.
so going back to your original question, see, I've weaved back now. So going back to your original question of when did I find out? So we made a little bit of money on speaking. We saw there was money in the tapes. We saw there was money in the tools, in the books rather. And I questioned that, and I got shot down for questioning it. Like, don't ever even think about asking that question again, because
Yeah.
the cat will be out of the bag. But what really hit me was when we would go in and speak, there's a concept called cross-lining. You've probably heard that term. And cross-lining is defined as don't talk to anybody outside of your line of sponsorship. So if you sponsor me and you sponsor Joe, you're upline to both of us, but Joe and I are cross-lined from each other.
Yeah.
Well, even if Joe and I live in the same town, we really shouldn't ride to the functions together. We shouldn't really spend a lot of time together, because
Right.
Joe has no interest in my success. Only Danny has interest in my success. So I should only talk to Danny. Only talk to Danny. It's very similar to when the Australian government or New Zealand government said, if you want information on COVID, only listen to us. You know, whenever somebody says only listen to me, run. But whatever.
Everything.
So, you know, but I would be invited in to speak different places, and you can't help but cross-lining a little bit, because you would be going out for lunch and dinner, and they're treating you like royalty, and they're driving you around, and you're in their limousine and all this stuff. And I started to see people that were at levels that weren't as high as us, but were living, like buying new cars and all this stuff. And I'm, you know, yeah, my wife was able to retire, but I'm building my business. My money's going in my gas tank, and I'm driving to here and driving to there, and I got to go see, you know, I got to go see Laird, and I got to go see Dan, and I got to go see Terry, and, you know, whatever. And they're all 2.5 hours away. So, but I see these people with better lifestyles, and then my buddy Scott finally talked to me about it. He's like, dude, he's like, you know how much money we're making on tools? I'm like, what are you talking about? And so we ended up going Sapphire. We had 2 legs over, we went Sapphire. And when we hit Sapphire, my upline came to me and said, you're going to get a discount on your tapes. We're going to give you, instead of paying $7 a tape, you're going to pay $6.90 or $6.80. I can't remember. It was very small. The most I ever made in 1 month was like $60. It wasn't a lot, but there was some. Yeah. So when there's some, you realize, well, there could be more, obviously. And when I go back in my mental brain and go, hey, wait, I saw that receipt for $100 or $1.70, there's got to be a shit ton more. So these things start to happen. And then as I'm building the business further, things start to slow down around 1999. They started a concept called Quick Star. Things started to slow down in the business a little bit. And my upline, who had faked their diamond ship, stopped sponsoring people, stopped bringing people, and now they started just having functions and you know their own stuff. And I know that they're making a profit on that. And there was a big tool table set up at the profit where you can buy extra tapes and extra, you know, and you'd actually, there would be prizes for the people that bought the most tapes, you know. And so, you know, you're motivating people to buy stuff at your conferences. And then they started coming out with their own tools. Like we had this flip chart for showing the program, which was nothing more than a 3-ring plastic folder with, you know, page protectors in it that we could show the plan with. Well, I've been showing the plan for years without page protectors and all this stuff, but it's another $35 worth of revenue to get it into the group. And my diamond would say, hey, get up on stage when you're up there and talk about the importance of the flip charts and have people order extra flip charts. So if they get somebody who's hot, they can leave them a flip chart. So that guy can show the plan right away and we'll duplicate this faster. And like all these just amateur tools and all this stuff. I'm like, this is going in a really rotten direction. And the functions are getting smaller and smaller. And I'm like, my group is leaving. People are not staying. I got platinums that aren't coming to meetings anymore because they've been mentally beat up by my upline because we're not growing fast enough. Instead of him looking in the mirror and talking to himself, it's all our faults, you know, that we're not growing. And so people stop coming. People don't want to be abused. They don't want to listen to this crap. And I think it was the MLM kid who said, this is a perfect environment for a narcissist, because if you're already a narcissist, this is a great environment for you as a leader, because now you already know how to manipulate people. And it started to become that. So I started looking for ways to continue to grow my business. We had enough money coming in, you know, I had very profitable, 12 out of 12, founders, everything. I mean, we always got founders bonuses, went to the Q12s, achievers. So it wasn't ever a problem of profitability. It was more of a mental thing when I started seeing all the nonsense that was going on.
This money that was coming out of it. And that, I guess ultimately my next question was actually going to be like, when did the moral aspect become too much for you? Because I'm assuming your downline had no idea that you were making money off the tools.
I didn't share that with anybody because I mean, I knew it was a thing because I was making, but you're talking about $60 a month. We're not talking about what's being done today. And let me explain that. Let me explain that in a way that people can understand. So here's Today it's organized with apps and everything else, okay? But understand something. If you understand the Amway compensation plan, the person who actually makes the sale of a product makes the most money on that product. Now, I'm going to give you an example. If I sell a product for $10, let's say it cost me 7, I get 7 BV. Let's say I get 10 BV to make it easy. And I'm at let's say I'm at 600 points is my level I'm at, which means I get 9%. Okay, so I make 9% of that $10. I make 90 cents. But if I sold the product and made $3 profit, I actually made $3.90. All right. And my upline, say they're at 15% and I'm at 9, so they make the differential. So they would have made 6% of 10, they made 60 cents. So I made 390, they made 60. The further you go up the line of sponsorship on an Amway sale, the less money that particular person makes on each sale. So the IBO at the bottom, I say bottom, I'm talking structure, at the bottom who made the sale makes the most money. The upline triple diamond crown ambassador, Jupiter, whatever level they're at, they might be making 1/4 of 1/4 of 1/4 of 1%. So on that particular sale, that item, I made the most as the IBO. My upline made the least. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
The way the tool system works is directly the opposite. So I spend $80 a month or whatever number we're using on a app, and I don't make anything off of that. There is no compensation plan for me. I can't get 3% of my 80. There's no 6% of my 80. There's no plan. So the money starts at platinum. And I don't know what percentage they get, and I don't want to speculate because I'm sure they're all different. Then the emerald makes more than the platinum, and the diamond makes more than the emerald. Okay. So directly the opposite of the money flow that the products have. In the product flow, the person who made the sale made the most money. In the tool flow, the person who bought the tool at the bottom made the least money, and the person at the top made the most. Wow. So once I started to understand that, I'm in the middle here. I'm at $60 a month is nothing, but I'm like, okay, there's money here. But I got great friendships with people, and we're all building our business. And Dan's about to go silver, and Barry's going to go platinum, and whatever. So you just keep the momentum going, and I'll take my $60. I'll put it in my gas tank, no big deal. But you start to see that there's a difference in that. So that's one of the reasons I started to figure out when I would call my upline and say, hey, we sponsored 3 new people this month, and the question would say, did they get into the system? They never asked if they did their 100 points. Did they get into the tool system? Now you'd ask, did they get signed up for the apps? Or I guess in this case, now everybody signs up for the apps because they won't even let you in if you don't. So keep in mind, and this is something that I think every IBO should know. Most people are afraid of sales. There's a little bit of fear there of selling. That's why everybody's not a salesperson. Nobody has a fear of buying. So it's easier to buy than it is to sell. I can motivate you to sign up for an app because it's going to help you grow through your fear. Then I can motivate you to sell a bottle of shampoo.
Absolutely.
And even though the app costs you $80 a month and you will profit from the shampoo, it's easier to sign up for the app. And if my income comes from the number of people I have on these apps and on these programs and on these tapes and all that stuff, and I'm making good money on that, I'm actually making more money off of the tools than I am off of the products. And anybody who wants to argue that can argue that, but it's easier to get people to buy than it is to get people to sell. So let's have them buy the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of their biggest selling points too is not just that the tools, right? It's like there's so many different things that they can use the tools for and leverage, right? They're like, oh, well, you're better at your job now that you're using the tools, right? Whether the person was in sales or they were working at a gas station, doesn't matter. Their customer service is going to be so much better because of the tools, which in theory people would like move up in their companies, or they would leave to go to a better job because they could interview better. The tools are the reason why that happens. Like, why wouldn't you, for worldwide, why wouldn't you want to be on Premier membership? Premier membership is the highest tier. I don't know how much it is now. When I was in, it was like $80 a month, plus the extra $1 for John Maxwell's audios or whatever. And then of course you're on standing order, and that's the weekly new audio that would come out. But that's the way that they would sell it. And they would say, oh, that's just your overhead, which you did a really good example of, like, hey, you hope that you make more than what you're spending. And they wouldn't include the products as your business expense. They would say your tools that you're buying, that's your overhead. What business can you run where you're running $200 a month? That's when I was in worldwide. And I know it's more expensive for some different LOAs and just based on the different tools. Like at most, let's say $300 a month for overhead. Like, what business is that? And they would say, like, what business can you do and spend only $300 a month on your overhead, where Walmart might spend the bazillion dollars or whatever? And you have to buy the tools because it's going to get you better in every aspect of
Right.
your life. It's so much easier to sell the tools.
And it may get you better in every aspect of your life. I don't know. Maybe it does. I know that I've been friends with several people who are still Amway distributors, and I think they're really good people. And I think the tools have made them better people in their life. But I also think that you have to understand you're in a business. Okay. So in 2020, I kept renewing my business. And when I went inactive, completely inactive in 2009 or 10, whatever it was, I was still getting checks for $2,000 a month coming in with no expense, because I stopped going to conferences. I stopped listening to everything. At that point, you had to order 50 points a month in order to get an override bonus. So I would put my order in for my 50 points. And I was using like vitamins or Glister or something. I don't know. I don't really like Glister. I like the Althrins, but I don't have it anymore. But so I would order my 50 points and I would get my $2,000 and thought, okay, I spend $1,200 a year to get back 24,000. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll just renew and eventually it'll dry up. Well, since 2009, we're now in 2024. It's obviously dried up where I'm still renewed. And let me tell you why I renewed, because I have no interest in building the business. But when in 2020, they came out with a thing, the Federal Trade Commission came out and said that you now could either be a preferred customer or you have to be like in or out. Like you just can't be an inactive person anymore. So all of the people in the organization will become inactive. And so I thought, well, wait, if they're all going to be inactive, they're all going to be customers and they're still buying, I might as well renew and just let it ride. So now I run, I don't know, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 points a month. I think this month my check was $205, but I've had checks recently as much as 400. I'm nowhere near where I was before. It's dwindling, and people are dying and they're not ordering anymore. What I will say is this: at $205 a month, I would be willing to bet that I'm more profitable than most platinums because I don't have any expenditure. So if you're making $3,000 a month but spending $4,000, you're losing. And it's, well, you can write it off. Well, write it off. That's like when my wife goes shopping and she goes, hey, I just found this shirt. It's 40% off. I'm like, yeah, but it's 60% on. The fact that you say 40%, show me the 40%. Where is it? Is it in an account? You have to look at any business and profitability. So the question is, are you making measurable progress in reasonable time?
Yeah.
And I would say that most people are not making measurable progress in reasonable time. But in order to get upline attention, you have to be in the system. And nobody wants to lose that human touch. So there are a lot of people that stay in the business because of association.
Yeah.
And the longer somebody is in without success, the more their belief chips away. That's why the majority of platinums who don't requalify never qualify again. The majority of diamonds who don't qualify never qualify again. So because there's a tool system that's supporting their lifestyle, it doesn't matter what their Amway PV is at some point. But I've had a conversation with somebody who's very big in the business, and if I said the name, people would know it. I'm not going to get into it. But I asked him point blank on the telephone, not even that many years ago, because he's in a different multi-level business now, and he wanted me to get involved with him. And so we were talking $300,000 a year Amway income, which is very good.
Yeah.
$960,000 tool income.
Wow. That's a huge difference.
The numbers are pretty good. The lifestyles that you see are not all from Amway income. And that's on the disclaimer at the end of every CD.
Yeah, it is. And what's crazy is when I heard the disclaimer, right? The income depicted might come from sources other than Amway, such as the sale of business and training tools or outside investments. They say it so fast and they put it right where there's just a little bit of clapping at the end of the audio where everybody turns it off anyway.
Right.
And never once did I question it, but you're right. It's right there. And it's even in the terms and conditions that you sign when you sign up for the apps now, which I'm sure back then they didn't have the same terms and conditions.
Yeah, no terms and conditions.
Literally written.
Matter of fact, to tell you how it was more based on where you were in the organization. So there might be an Emerald that's personally sponsored by somebody at the top of an organization that's making more money on tools than, say, a Diamond down in depth because of where they are in the group. You got to have enough money, enough profits for everybody because there's no system laid out. Yeah. So you don't want to lose that, and your upline controlled it. So I'll give you an example. When my business started going south, and there were reasons it went south, and I don't even want to get into it, but it had something to do with my upline, and just people were leaving. People were just leaving. And so it took me 10 years to build, took 6 months to fall apart. But when it started to fall apart, I thought, I got to keep, I'm the leader here. Buck stops with me, whatever. So we're going to do an every Sunday night conference call. We'll do a conference call on Sunday nights. we used to do team calling once in a while, and team phone calling. We're gonna do a conference call. So I had people all over the country. I had people in like 30 states, 2 foreign countries. We had IBOs in Hawaii. We had people all over the place. And so it was great to pull them together on a Sunday and do a conference call. And I thought, hey, my buddy's in Emerald. I'll have him come on the conference call and talk. What a great idea. In any business, that's normal. Like, bring somebody out to talk. So we get on Sunday night call. He comes in, gets on for maybe an hour, tells a bunch of jokes, motivates everybody, had a great time, just phenomenal. And I get a call 2 days later from my upline. Now, this Emerald was outside of his organization. It wasn't his, it's not downline from him. He says, I understand you had a conference call the other night and you brought in a cross line to do that call. I said, yeah. He goes, I don't want you doing that. I said, why? It motivated everybody. Everybody wants to grow. It's awesome. Yeah, but we don't do that. That's cross-lining. I'm like, wait, we just had him in to speak like a month ago. Why was it not cross-lining then? Well, because I'm the one who brought him in. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't pay the guy anything, and he motivated my group. It was great. That's like having a free employee. He's like, you and I need to get together. All right, we get together, and here's what happened. He says to me, do not ever do that again. If you do that again, listen to words, like a high school kid here. If you do that again, I will never recommend that you go out and speak ever again. And I will ban you from all of my functions. Now, keep in mind, I'm 75% of the function.
Yeah.
But it's a big power kick. It's a big power kick. So I decided I was going to leave, change lines of sponsorship. I saw it going south. I'm like, I don't know what to do. My income's dropping. Do I hold on to this? Do I not hold on to it? 90% of my income, 99% of my income still coming from Amway. So I reached out. So I started going to another open meeting in town. And it turned out it was an LTD open meeting. And I met some people there that I really liked. They're my age. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, you can come to our meetings if you'd like. But no word of actually changing lines of affiliation. There was no talk of that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll start bringing my people in here. Well, then, of course, my upline found out that I was going to the other couples meetings. And they got all mad about that. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I said something to this guy. So I said something to him. I said, how do I change LOAs? He goes, people do it all the time. There's all kinds of plugins all over Amway. There's plugins to LOA. And I'm sure they're in worldwide, and I'm sure they're everywhere. They leave their original line of sponsorship. Now, the thing that's interesting is when you leave your line of sponsorship, your volume, your PV your business stays. If I'm selling $1 million in Amway products, my upline still gets that $1 million of the Amway product. They don't want me to leave because they don't want me taking my tool business with me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had to go through a whole process, and I finally decided. I said, you know what, I got to do something. I said, I'm losing people. There's no organization here this is a mess. It's a narcissistic mess, and I'm in the middle of it. Nobody's listening to me because they think I'm a lower pin than the other guy, the guy who faked his pin level. And so I decided that I was going to leave. And then it's a whole process. You have to contact the LOA's office. They send out a whole form, a thing where you sign that, you are going to be making a profit on tools. I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess there's profit on tools everywhere. But my tool flow was so low at that point that it was only because of what level I was at. They go by level, that I might have started making $34 a month. I mean, we're not talking enough. I'm not talking $360,000 a year. I'm talking about a very small amount of money.
Yeah.
And the motivation just wasn't, like, I've already done this once. I don't want to rebuild it.
Yeah.
I can't motivate my people to get started again. I know that the average person who goes platinum doesn't requalify. I know I'm probably never going to go sapphire again. If I really look at it, I'm probably never going to get an emerald qualification again. I'm 30 years older than I was when I started this, or 20 years older. And so when I left, I was actually at Wrigley Field. I was at a ball game, and I sent a note to my upline, original upline. I sent an email. I'll never forget. I was in a stall at Wrigley Field underneath the left field bleachers in the bathroom. And I sent my note, and I said, we are no longer plugging into your organization. Me and my people are going to be changing lines of affiliation. Done. Sent it. Felt great. And then like 15 minutes later, my phone rings, and he says, well, I'd like to talk to you about this. And I said, okay, what do you want to talk about? I'm not staying around. This is ridiculous. I'd already gotten into like a verbal fight at a Q12 thing with his wife, and it was a mess. So he said to me, well, I'll tell you what, if you're willing to stay, I'll give you 22% of all of the tools that go through your organization.
Wow.
And I looked at him, I said, what are you talking about? He's like, I'll give you 22%. And then I started thinking about that old story I told earlier about the books, that they cost $9 and they were $22. Well, I would have made $4.40 per book.
Wow.
So I'm like, so then I thought, I'm already leaving. I wasn't staying for 22%, but I thought the offer really showed me that this was about tools. It wasn't about PV, because you were going to get my PV. He says, I'm willing to give you 22%. He says, now, if you tell anybody that, somebody said, if you tell anybody that I told you this, I will deny ever saying it. And I'm a diamond, and they'll believe me and not you.
Wow.
Probably not true. I had more credibility with my team than he did. So I thought to myself, okay. Then I turned around and I asked one question because I'm a pretty smart guy. I said, let me ask you a question. If you're going to give me 22%, what do we give the next guy in my downline who reaches the level I'm at? Does he get 22% also? Because that's how that should work.
Yeah.
And his response was, we'll worry about that when the time comes.
Wow.
And I thought, and I left. I changed lines of sponsorship. When I left, the most I ever had come to conferences was 275, I think, 275 people. When I left and
Wow.
went to the new group, I brought like 30 people was all. And and then I actually left some people behind in the LOA because there's confusion now. Like one guy's downline would go with me, and then his upline would go the other way. I'm not leaving. We're part of this group, and so you create so much confusion. Confusion creates doubt, and doubt creates inactivity. People sit and just wait to see what's going to happen. So confusion always creates doubt. So there's confusion. And went to the new line of sponsorship. Was qualified Q12 still as a pin level. Had maybe, like I said, $35 coming. We weren't speaking anymore. We weren't part of that LOA anymore. And so majority of my money was still coming from Amway at that point. And then it just wasn't coming together. We fell below 7,500. I'm like, I'm not redoing this. I'm just not. And we
Right.
left. But here's what's interesting. This is where the story's going. From that day that I left the LOA, I never heard another word ever in 15 years from my upline.
Oh.
This is the same upline who would get on stage. I will never forget when we went Founders Sapphire. We were in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the Grand Plaza Hotel. That was where our conference was. He got on stage. My parents came to the meeting. They've never been to a function. They wanted to see their son recognized. They were proud of me, whatever. And they were never positive about the Amway business. They were a customer, but they were always like, you're chasing all around, and you're, how much money you spending? You making any money? Because we were delaying our gratification. My parents came and they were in the crowd. They were so proud. He got on stage and talked about, this guy is like a son to me. And, we're so proud of them and we love them. And they're going to be so big in the business. We're traveling the world together and da, da, da. And so I'm their son, quote unquote. And when I left, even though they still got my PV, never, ever heard from them again. Not a word.
Wow.
Now, there was an upline between us, okay? And that upline between us, I had a bigger business than what they had. I was more profitable than what they were. So there was a lot of jealousy throughout the time that I was building it. But I hadn't heard from them since 2009 either. And when the FDA thing came out in 2020, I had my first correspondence from them, and it said, hey, since you're not really active, you should become a preferred customer. And when I started to look into it a little bit, I thought, okay, so they're going to get all my stuff, because if I go up customer, then everybody underneath me is customer. That's why I renewed in 2020. Was out of spite. It's a spite renewal. It's like, screw you. You ain't getting a dime of my money. So I renewed. I have one customer today. It's my mother. If Amway hears this, they can shut off my IBO ship. It's fine with me. I really don't care. There's nobody and I haven't even ordered, because after 2020, you didn't have to order a product. All your preferred customers I get my customer volume every month from my downline preferred customers, and I get a check. And hey, more power to me. And only because I don't want to give it to somebody else. So the point I'm making is, after all the love bombing and all the, these are the greatest people in the world, love bombing, once you take your tool business from them, they don't love you anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty
that's
simple.
Wow. And that's so sad, because I like that devastates me, because we wanted to believe so much, even today, like that our upline are there. They're there for us. And I never would have thought that even back then that they had the same like cold-heartedness as they do today, because we're all replaceable. They could just go find another Steve or another Danny or another Fred, because they have such a high turnover rate. Like, we're just numbers to them. But we were going to travel the beaches of the world. They loved us. Like, I love you, man. Like, but you never hear from them again, because they're not making the money anymore.
Well, and I'm sure there are people within the organizations that are traveling the beaches of the world together. Diamonds and emeralds go together. They go on hunting trips. They do this. And they're having their great relationships and having fun. But the average IBO, here's a test that if there's an IBO listening to this, let me give them a test they should do. Call your upline and tell them that you are struggling financially, and you'd like to take 2 months and just not do the apps for 2 months. If it's November, I'll come back on in February, but I'm going to take December and January. I'm not going to do any apps. I'm cutting down all my expenses. I'm just going to go bare minimum because I got to get back in my finances in line. And you see what kind of reaction you get. They won't ask you about, well, are you still going to do your PV? They're gonna be like, well, you should probably keep, maybe get the smaller app or keep the app, or, the only way you're gonna get out of the system. Or here's another quote that we used to use: if you're up to your neck in crap, it doesn't matter if you wet your pants. So what that means is if you're already broke, go ahead and spend some more money on the apps because you're already broke. You're not gonna be a broker. But if you don't spend money on the apps, you're never gonna get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's
Stay
what they
plugged
want.
in.
That's what they want you to think. But again, all of the conversation is about: did they get their function ticket yet? Have they bought their ticket yet? Are they going to the conference? Have they bought their ticket yet? Were they at the last meeting? Even if your baby is lost and you can't find them at the meeting, come to the next meeting. Like you had that situation, couldn't find it. It's always about the next meeting, the next meeting. It's because, and I'm going to make up numbers here. So I'm speaking completely. If anybody is listening that has the facts, you can fact check, correct it, whatever. So I'm going to make this up as I go. But let's just take an app that's $100. Somebody's making money on that $100. Okay, so let's take that $100 and make it into a penny, make it into 100 pennies. In the Amway plan, if I sell that bottle of shampoo for $10, I made 30 pennies. I'm sorry, dollar. I made 30 pennies profit. I made 9 pennies in bonus. So I made 39 of the 100 pennies. There's only 100 pennies. There's no more than 100. You can't get 105 pennies out of 100. So I made 39. My upline who sponsored me made 6 cents. The guy above that made 3 cents, whatever. There's a cost of making the product. Amway's got to have a profit. All of that comes together to make $1. Okay. In the tool system, there's no manufacturing. So a bottle of Satnique that costs X number of dollars to make and package and label and get, FDA ratings and everything else that takes money. That's all goes into the cost of that product. In an app that I pay $100 for, I don't know, maybe the cost is $2. I don't know what it is. I'm making it up, but there's 98 cents to play with as opposed to only 36 cents to play with.
Yeah.
So you follow the money. Now, am I saying it's right or wrong? There's a difference between morality and legality.
Yeah.
Is it a legal business? Well, so far it is, or it would have been shut down. Is there a moral issue there? That's up to the people that are doing it.
Yeah.
I was not comfortable with how this all went down. Now I'm real comfortable with my $205 a month. So I'm making up for what I spent.
Yeah. Wow.
And so people are being paid to speak. People are being paid to do talks. What always amazes me is you go to a conference and you pay $100, and I don't know if they're 100. I'm speaking just out of whatever. And then you buy the audios of the same talk that you heard at the conference. You paid for it at the conference and paid for it on audio at the same time.
Yes.
You paid for it again.
God, you're right.
You paid for it again.
Twice.
That's as dumb as paying property taxes on money you've already been taxed.
Yeah.
You're paying taxes with taxed money. Like, wonder why America's broke.
Yeah.
And so the more that we do that, the more that we, you can't miss anything. I mean, we were told if you miss a function, that's going to take 6 months off your freedom date.
Yep. Same. They still say that.
You can't miss a function because you might miss the magic sentence, that one sentence, the magic sentence that takes you to diamond. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it was a magic sentence. My business went from 7,500 PV to 22,000 PV in like 5 months. And there were no magic sentences. There was me working my ass off.
Yeah.
But the duplication side of it is where I ran into a little problem because I enjoyed going out talking to people. I enjoyed going to the airport and sitting next to somebody at a gate and saying, hey, who are you waiting for? Oh, I'm waiting for my cousin too. And then when their cousin would show up, I'd go to another gate. I think that when people would come to me for counseling, because I was their upline, your upline knows everything. Can we sit down and counsel? Like, yeah, what do you want to counsel about? Let's talk about finances. All right. Well, we're just not making enough money. Well, have you gone to the airport and tried to meet people? What? Like, they couldn't do what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some people did. But keep in mind, again, going back to statistics, the average Amway distributor sponsors between 1 and 1.5 people. That's the average. Yeah. Me going platinum with 14 was way above average. But if the truth were to be known, the average Amway distributor sponsors 1.5 people, or maybe 2. I don't even know anymore. Maybe 1. I don't know. It's not a lot, but it's hard to go 20 wide when the average guy does 1.
Yeah. Yeah. 20. That's what the crown guy always preaches. You go 20, you'll have a solidified diamond ship for the rest of your life.
20, you'll have 6 to 8 right now, 6 to 8 later, and 6 to 8 next year. I got it. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, you got to snip all your family members out. That was like the audio that they would always like recommend to us was the crown guy would say, snip if they're not positive, snip. I told my wife's mom that if she wasn't about it, we're going to snip her too. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, it was horrible the way that they spoke about family members, but it's all, and these are the tools we're paying for, by the way. This is
Well,
an audio we're paying for.
and truthfully, now you have to speak about that more because of the internet. So
Yeah.
the uplines have to learn more defense techniques now than what they used to when I was doing this. Because,
Yeah.
the only communication we had was we didn't even have cell phones in the beginning. But you had your answering machine, so you call people back, and that's how you knew people called you. They left you a message. There
Yeah.
wasn't research you could do. AOL came along in 97 or 94, whenever it was, but there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. Now you got your podcast and Roberta's podcast and all kinds of stuff on Reddit and all kinds of stuff everywhere that's being exposed. So these uplines have to
Yeah.
become better. They have to be actually better at laying the groundwork and saying, don't check with your family members. Don't talk to them about this. They don't know.
Yep.
There were 4 phases of Amway. This one's different. They're really not any different. It's just we've gone digital versus analog. You don't have
Yeah.
product pickup anymore, but
They have to lay the groundwork really heavy up front. You're absolutely right. Because they would say, because even today, like there's so much more today than even when I was in 2016. Because they would always say, "Oh, I don't want to hear that you asked your grandma who was involved in like the 80s because we're not like that anymore." Like you said, the eras. But then they would say, "Oh, how can you trust so and so on Reddit? They're not even willing to give you our face. Most of you know where I live." That was the club owner's like favorite line to say. Why are you going to trust Sexy Kitten 69 is the name he would use on Reddit? But I'm showing you my face. And I've learned now that the power dynamic is the reason why Reddit is so valuable, because people can go on there and say whatever the hell they want without the fear. But they have to keep learning what is out there. In a 3-part episode of audio that I had recorded, so it's the club owner speaking, and not even 20 minutes into the talk of that was like a 3-hour talk, they're immediately telling you to question anybody who questions this opportunity.
See, but that doesn't make any sense in the real world. If
No.
you were applying for a job, you would try and find out everything you can about the company.
Yeah, you're supposed to research them ahead of time.
Every LOA says that they are the best one and they're the most successful one. So I think if you contacted me about Amway today and I was going to do it, I'd be like, okay, thank you for letting me know about it. I'm going to do research on all these LOAs and research on who the best sponsor would be and research. I really want to find out. I want my odds of succeeding to be great. And there was we had a team meeting one time, and I brought this gal. I sponsored this new gal, really sharp lady, had a couple $100,000 year income, just sharp as a tack. And we talked about, it's 2 to 5 years, you build this thing. And I brought her to a conference, one of these team meetings, and there was another lady there who was a platinum. And I thought, oh, single lady, best thing to introduce them to each other so they can, get that perspective versus my perspective. So they met, and this lady's name was Diane, and she said the platinum, she says, well, how long have you been doing this? And this platinum says, oh my God, I love the business. I've been doing this for 26 years. And my downline's like, what? Steve told me 2 to 5 year plan. What are you talking about 26 years? What level are you? Well, I'm a platinum. Oh, you do this full time? No, I still work, but I'm getting closer. And my gal never came back to another meeting. So, you have to become where, how do you protect people from negativity on the internet, negativity from their family, negatively, truthfully, from other IBOs who are just telling the truth. Yeah, I've been doing this 24 years and I'm a platinum. But truth is only of value when it benefits us.
Yeah.
In some cases. Yeah. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so you can also smoke that with religion and many other things to make it look like we're really good people.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it too. That is a whole side of it that I've learned over time just talking to different people. Because I'm not by any means a religious individual. And I think that my LOA definitely steered me away from a faith in general, just because of the way that they did things. But that's a whole big manipulation tactic that they use. Like, oh, well, I had this girl come on. She was obviously already, well, not obviously, but she was already Christian. If you guys haven't listened, go listen to Ashley's episode. She's amazing. She's the one actually who talked about how there was a platinum who had platinum gave her life to the business, life. She passed away, and she was on like texting terms with a very high diamond. If you guys are familiar with my podcast, I call him the guy who talks really fast. It's his parents. She's on a texting basis. Nobody showed up to her funeral. And they had to create a GoFundMe, but she was she was almost a ruby. She was making all this money. Anyways, it's her episode, and she talks about how her upline, when she questioned things, They said, oh, well, your God must be wrong because my God says that this is the right opportunity.
Yeah, that's funny because when you watch a football game and the winning team, you hear the guy who kicked the winning field goal and he says, well, God was on my side. And I think to myself, was God against the losing team?
Such a good point. I love that.
Was God against the guy who got intercepted?
Yeah, it's sad because when you're in a vulnerable spot, because I feel like now, and it's the way that some of these people get involved. I know when I got involved, it was a very, very, very vulnerable, low point in time in my life, and when these people get to such a low point, they hit below the belt in the most passive aggressive way to where, oh, it sounds positive the way that they say it's always the toxic positivity, but it is sometimes the most insulting shit that they could ever say to an individual, and it sucks.
Yeah, but because they've been edified so much, the
Yeah,
person who's getting it done to them starts to question themselves and not the person who did it. So
absolutely.
you can control the minds of the organization by letting everybody know how great the leader is. And even if
Yeah.
the leader's not great, but God, they're a diamond. Well, they may not be a diamond. I'd be willing to bet the majority of diamonds aren't diamonds.
Ah, gosh, when I learned, especially from you specifically, about the manufacturing of the pin levels, I mean, I'm not surprised. Again, none of this stuff surprises me, but it's still kind of like I feel deceived. Even like I think about me when I was involved, and I'm like, really? But it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of deception. Why wouldn't they manufacture pins? Especially when you're talking about an up and coming couple who is maybe really, really young. It makes sense to boost them. They give people that motivation. Oh, they're in their 20s and they're going diamond. What? Oh, I really can do this. Oh, they've been doing it for 8 years. Oh, I can do this. Like it just adds that belief. And it, like you said, it's smoke and mirrors.
So sometimes it is now, legitimately, if a person, truthfully, if you just take forget this whole podcast and forget everything we've said and just go from a logic standpoint, you go out and sponsor 10 people, they all do the 300 points, you put some depth underneath them, you can make $60,000-$70,000 a year building an Amway business. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
legitimate compensation plan, and the checks actually deposit. When you go to the grocery store, they don't say, "Wait, is that Amway money?"
Yeah.
It's very possible. And if somebody chooses to
Yeah.
do it, go for it. The problem comes, that's not what the motivation of the organization is. Yes, they want success in Amway, but it's a lot of it because that's how the tool system flows. And that's where their
Yeah.
income is coming from. And I'll give you an example. So I know of a platinum who's not qualified, who, in order for their upline to maintain an emerald ship, they have to have 3 legs. We have to have 3 qualified legs. So if leg
Yeah.
3 or leg 2 and 3 aren't qualifying, you need to be an emerald to get the emerald cut on tools. Otherwise, you don't get it,
Yeah.
right? Well, if you know that you're going to make $100,000 on tools, why not dump $20,000 into that leg and buy the PV you need? Still have an $80,000 profit. The problem with that scenario is, and I'll use this as an example. The problem with that scenario is, in this particular case, the husband was more sold out to the business than the wife was. Many times women have better intuition than men do. And she would walk down in the basement and there'd be, 17 burglar alarm systems or 17, air filters or cookware set, whatever it was. There'd be a bunch of
Uh-huh.
it down there that was there. And I'm like, and I said, did you buy all that stuff? They're like, no, my upline bought it for me, transferred the PV to me. And when we got our bonus check, we just paid it back to them. But it keeps people qualified. So you hear Roberta talk about garage qualified, basement qualified. I can't tell you how
Yeah.
many people have fertilized their lawn with double X because they needed the qualification. They needed the 500 points, the 1,000 points, because they have to hit qualification. If I've gone 11 months and I'm in my 12th month and I'm going to get a $20,000 check for qualifying 12 out of 12, and I'm only at 3,000 PV and I need 4,000 PV, it's going to cost me $12,000 worth of double X, but I'm going to get a check for 20. $8,000 profit is better than no profit.
It makes so much sense. We heard allegedly, of course, that there is a Canadian couple who did that. They were falling out of qualification because one of their ruby legs was like leaving. This person got blacklisted. In fact, this person sent some screenshots to me just to kind of, again, this is all alleged. But anyway, that they would buy whatever to make up the difference for their PV and put it in their nanny's name. And I remember thinking, like, is it really that important to keep qualified for Amway? But you nail in the coffin right there. It's because the tools business, if they don't stay qualified as diamonds, they're not going to make as much with the tools. Because I would imagine that nowadays, hopefully, I don't know. The moral side, like you said, there's moral and legal, but the moral aspect, right? There's probably some sort of solidified, like you said, contract that says once you're at this level, you make X amount. And if you fall below that, you'll go back down.
I signed it. I know there is. When I move lines of affiliation, I know there is.
Right. Okay. So then, yeah. So then they're held to the standard from the tools business. Like, hey, you're not going to make as much from the tools if you don't stay at this diamond level. That makes sense. Oh my god.
I'm not criticizing anybody. I had a blast. I had a blast building the Amway business. It was a fun experience for me. I love getting in front of the groups and talking. I had a ball.
Yeah.
But what I'm telling you is from experience. So I'm not making any theories up here. I'm telling my story.
Sure.
So my story is my story.
Wow. Holy crap. And what's life like for you now that you're out of Amway and obviously you're thriving?
Oh no, yeah. But I stopped. I stopped in 2009. Just stopped going to things. I'll tell you the thing that, and I think I've heard other people actually say this, and I laughed every time I heard it, was going into a restaurant not thinking you got to prospect the waiter, or going like I think I struggled to buy my first Monster energy drink. Like, oh, should I get the Monster? God, oh my God, Monster's like half the price, twice the size can. I'm like, wow, and it's pretty good. So some of those things, because I kind of faded away, I never really got, I told you so, and I never really got I told you so because I was successful with it. I mean.
Yeah.
I sent you a copy of my 1099 from whenever it was.
This is true.
Impressive. It was equal to a very nice 6-figure income in today's dollars.
Absolutely.
So there wasn't ever anybody like that. You couldn't shake my tree, as they say, because I was making my own tree. But I would say that going out to eat and just not trying to contact people and just saying, hey, how are you? Hey, I like your shoes, and I actually like their shoes. You know what I mean? It's like they actually had cool shoes. I had all the, I walk up to people say, hey, you look familiar. What's your name? And they give me their name. We start talking. Do I know you? No, I don't know. Just such bullshit. And I was really good at it. I was really good at it. And the longer these guys do it, the better they are at it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a technique. It just becomes part of your life. And so when you're not around it anymore, you start, living life. And the beauty of what I did, though, I have to say this, is I didn't lose any relationships. Like when this podcast comes out, if you decide to keep it, I'll send it out to 50 guys that were in my group. And we'll all laugh about it. If somebody left the business, I never, ever shunned them. Where my upline shunned me, I am still friends. Yeah. Matter of fact, I got a text message the other day. Hey, we need to catch up. A buddy of mine in Florida. We need to catch up. Yeah, we just had dinner together the other day. I mean, I'm still friends with so many of them. I never eliminated relationships outside of the business. I did have some family struggles because I missed some family events, thinking I was doing the right thing. People made fun of what we were doing in the early days. I did stay away from them, which caused, some problems. I didn't break relationships. What I see with a lot of IBOs today, they don't have any relationships outside of the business. And it's sad.
That is
sad. They have no relationships outside of the business, because then if they leave the business at some point, they're lost. So to answer your question, I'm coming back into the weave again. I'm coming back. So to answer your question, what's my life like now? So I got divorced and I'm remarried to a wonderful woman. And she had no background of Amway at all. So she didn't live this at all. And so I think that not having the business, it changed the way I look at relationships, I think.
Yeah.
It was funny because a friend of mine who was an Emerald, who moved lines of affiliation, they followed me. When I went to the new line of affiliation, like 6 other Emeralds and Platinums went to other parts of the organization. And so this guy came into Chicago. We took him out for dinner. And my new wife, said to me, he doesn't know anything. He's not worldly at all. He knows nothing. Like, why are you friends with this guy? I said, oh God, we go way back. But, never tasted this, never tasted that, don't have any friends outside of and they're not active in the business anymore. But they spent like 40 years of their life chasing this. They got Emerald done one time, but they cut so many other things out of their life. So if you can build this and still have a well-rounded life and understand that people are making money off of the tools, but you can make some money, you want to sell some products, it's still a business. It just goes, again, the question, moral versus legal. Do your thing, enjoy it. Wow. But so how my life has changed, I'm just doing my thing. And I do a lot of motivational speaking now for people. They know that I did. So I've actually done some other things. I'm just having a fun time with my life, and I'm not involved in Amway anymore, but I know a lot of people that are, and more power to them. But the truth of where the income's coming from is more of what I think we got on this podcast about. I got nothing really negative to say other than just facts.
Yeah, but that's, I think, the beauty of it. I think your perspective, like I said, is very unique because you do have such a positive outlook from that opportunity, or I guess opportunity with the experience of being a part of it. And I like that you're so close to people that you had built relationships with. It shows how genuine you were and why you were able to see kind of past what you felt was personally immoral. Whereas a lot of of people, I feel like, who are still involved, who are at that, I want to even say it, I would say there, I kind of give some grace at platinum. I do feel like anybody who's ruby and above, who's been around, who knows about the secret money, who shuns their downline. I feel like there's a level where they came to a head where they had to decide, I've worked so hard, so many years, so many nights. I'm making so much money. I can't leave this. So I have to conform. And then you have people who really just don't care. But it's sad that they build all these relationships with genuine people. The moment you stop, they're done. I don't talk to any of my upline. I wish I could. They blocked me on Instagram because I reached out. But it makes me sad because I feel like outside of the business, some of these people that I was in quote partnership with, if I was in the business with, they would have been such great people. And I really do wish that there were people that I met at functions who were crossline. They were so sweet and amazing. But then I have to remember that a lot of it, even today, is very like superficial. It's very, very, yeah. Like I can't say that I really even knew anybody.
Your conversations had to be surfacey.
We know about the weather. I knew that they were super fired up to be here and that I was lucky to be under whatever upline I was in, because that's what we had to say to people. Oh, you're here with them. Oh my God, they're amazing. I didn't know anything about them. They're probably some of the worst people in the world, realistically. But it is sad. And I love that you have that. And that's why I'm really excited that you were able to come and talk, because I feel like we have such a negative connotation with Amway. And I personally, from my perspective, I'm very anti-MLM. I don't personally believe that there's a positive MLM, but that's just my personal opinion and my personal experience. But I feel like there is a positive to gain from it, and to have that perspective is actually really great. So I do appreciate it.
One thing on that though, and I'm going to reiterate something I said earlier. Don't forget, the business that I built in rural Iowa, where people can get stuff delivered right to their house, that was a completely different business when that was before Amazon, like I said. So when you say MLMs today versus no MLM, if you just take a step back and think about 25 years ago, and there's no delivery for home product, some guy comes out and talks about I can make money and get my products delivered home. Sponsoring was a piece of cake. That aspect of multi-level marketing is better. Now, for that, I mean, anybody can do what I did back then. I don't know that I could build a business today. My God, I can't put people through the process. Jesus. Here, read this book. Come to this meeting. Let's talk. What are your goals? What's your budget? Come to the next meeting. Come to the next meeting. I think we might be able to make you an offer. It's not an offer. I mean, that's where you get into some of the crazy stuff. They're using the process now in other organizations, so it's not just worldwide. They're teaching it, and some of LTD is doing it, some of LTD is not. But my old upline, who I talked to now, this is higher than my original diamond. The guy, matter of fact, the guy whose house I was at, where I found the receipt for $1.70. His son, they've since passed away, but his son and I are about the same age. So I just stay in touch every couple months, once six months. Hey, how are you? How's everything going? Haven't talked to you for a long time. How's the business? And they're starting to do the process. And his comments to me are like, dude, this isn't going to work. Just like they're trying something new. So they've been around 50 years and now they're trying something new. You can't just keep introducing new stuff into an organization, because again, you're fighting people's belief. It's all about belief. And if the whole organization believes, it'll move on. If the whole organization doesn't believe, it's not moving on.
I'm so grateful that you came and had this amazing discussion. Talking to you is always so fun because, one, I love your energy. Like, you're super excited. Like, I'm also super excited. But the knowledge that you have is amazing, because we don't get the opportunity to really hear. They would always make it sound like people like you were like our grandfathers of the MLM, like the grandfathers and our ancestors of Amway. And it's just a perspective that shows how things have and have not changed about the LOAs, the tools side of things, and really that perspective that a lot of people don't get, because we have people who know about the getting paid, but you have the experience of being that person, and we don't get that very often. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, probably the most important thing I told you was when I went to leave and they offered me 22% to stay. That's probably the most impactful thing that your people should get out of this. It's like, where did the 22% all of a sudden come from? Because I was getting a dime. I understood the speaking part. Yeah, you get paid to take your time, pour your heart out to other people. That's what we were told. But, all of a sudden there's 22% because I'm threatening to leave? Really?
Right.
And take my group
That's
with
how dark it goes.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Good stuff, man. Danny, it's a good time.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time, Steve. I really, really appreciate it. If you guys are out there listening and you guys want to be like Steve and you guys want to come on and share about your experience in an MLM, doesn't have to be Amway, but you guys can also come and share about your experiences with trauma. I'm just here to talk about stories. You guys can DM me on Instagram at exesandt.podcast, or you can send me an email at DANI@exesandtpodcast.com. You guys can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are heard. Thank you so much again, Steve, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.